All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It is a wonderful Sunday, May 3rd, 2020, and today we are going to be going over habit formation. My name is Joshua. I am the owner of My Odyssey, and that's what we do. We do habit formation, building the habits that businesses, organizations, and personal clients have the desire to develop. So let's get right into it. First, what is a habit and why is it important? So by definition, a habit is something that you do regularly, often without knowing that you are doing it. So that's an interesting point, without knowing that you are doing it. And if we go to the second point that we have here, conservatively, 45% of our day is habitual. That's a lot of our day without even knowing that we're doing it. Our mind builds habits so we don't have to think about every little thing over and over. It's just a program. I'm not saying that we're living in the matrix, but it really does describe what our brain does nicely. So how do I personally look at habits? My definition. I look at habits as programs, and our logical mind, our prefrontal cortex, the mind that uses language, can be the programmer. We just have to know how to do it. We'll go through a simple equation that I utilize. It's very, very simple, but the utilization of it, the implementation of it can take years to master. Here are some areas that our habits have huge impacts that we don't even think about. On this list, you'll see habits like, habits like smoking or anything physical. All these things you can build habits in, but we think about habits in that way. In here on this list, we have things that we all have habits in that we don't really think about. So time management. What is our relationship with time? Does time, and we'll get into every one of these throughout the presentation, but is that an external thing that happens to us? Or is it an internal thing that we can perceive? Relationships. We all have habits when it comes to relationships. And if you've been in multiple relationships, you know that some of the same things keep coming up. Anything that's cyclical is a habit. Communication, emotional health, finances, our overall happiness. We're going to cover all these things, but all these things we have built-in habits that we deal with that we don't even know of. In fact, you've probably never even learned how to program it. Some bonus areas that we're going to cover right at the end of the presentation is for our people that run or work in organizations or have their own business. How can habits be utilized to your employees, to your management? And one of the biggest ones that I work with is trust. How much more effective would your business be if everybody trusted that they were going to do each other's job? Almost a Freudian slip there, huh? Don't want the former. What would it be like if management trusted the employees to do the job exactly how they were supposed to be? If the owner trusted everybody in the business, it would be like a hose without kinks. The money would print, but it's easy concept, hard to implement. Communication, another big thing. Communication will be a thread that we utilize throughout this presentation. Culture has to be habitual. Leadership, you have to be, your leadership, whether it be management or an owner or whoever you work with, you have to develop the traits of a leader, and those have to be second nature. So client retention or adherence, there'll be a couple of examples of that. Let's say you're a physical therapist and you would like to get your clients to do their plan of cares, because you know that 2/3 of people don't do the plan of cares. Well, how can we help them build the habit of adherence to their plan of care? Work processes. We know how important it can be for your business to make sure that your employees are doing the same thing each time. How can we help? How can we utilize habit formation to get those work processes down. Real quick, the rules of engagement for this particular Zoom. As we have questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be getting to them after. We are recording this Zoom so people can watch this at whenever they'd like. Feel free to engage with each other during the chat presentation. I won't be able to see it until I'm done with the presentation. I will take live questions afterwards, and all my contact information and everything will be on slides afterwards. So there's no rush to get that. You can always come back to this after, and feel free to reach out whenever. I mean, ultimately, it's my duty to make sure that I pass the wisdom of habit formation on to as many people as I can. And so that's what my priority is. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm gonna take a quick drink of water here. Man, it is a beautiful day out here in Wisconsin where I'm at. Okay, habit formation. I look at it as a math equation, all right? I try to make everything as simple, clear, and concise as possible. And this is the best way for me to think about it and how clients can kind of get it like that. So picture your mind as a computer. You are the programmer, consciously or not. You're constantly taking information from your senses and your brain is always processing it. So quick shout out to James Clear from Atomic Habits, who put this into words, the first part of this at least, into words, very clear, very concise. And then I think of it as the equation. So I'm kind of meshing James Clear's message and my own so we can make sure that we understand the equation that it is to develop a habit. Cue plus craving plus response plus reward, and you'll get a habit. You can interchange response and routine depending on where you are in the habit. So cue, something happens. So an external stimulus, you perceive. Craving, you have, all right, let's take somebody cuts you off in the road is the cue. The craving, I get angry. I'm craving to punch that person in the face. Response, I pull up to him and I yell and I scream. Reward, I let out some of that emotion, okay? And that can develop into a habit. So there's an example of where anger is a habit. So how, even to simplify it more, if this were a math equation, it'd be like, variables x, y, z, a, right? Or think of it as 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is going to equal 4, right? That's the equation. Those all have all those variables have the final result. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So if you change any variable, just like in a math equation, you change the result. You can change the habit, you can change the program. Here's the example. So if you just took one of those examples, so 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1 equals 5. So in that scenario, the cue is the same, but you change the craving of what happens when that cue happens to you. And then the routine will change. Anything after that spot will also change, but to simplify it, you can see how the habit would change as long as we just make it this simple math equation. Understanding how to change a variable in real life, it's what my company does. It's a super simple concept, but like I said, in practice, it takes a lifetime to master. So in a previous life, I was a restaurateur. I owned 7 large-scale bar restaurants. I owned 5 different cafes. I got out of that business because it wasn't my calling. And I got into this after I fought off a depression, honestly. And I realized that I needed to get my habits back to being right. And then I realized that I can share my knowledge, my wisdom of that. And so that's who I am, my story. And now I work with businesses, organizations from a wide variety of them. And of course, personal clients to develop the programs that to develop the habits that they would like. So we're going to go over each one of those things that we had talked about, but in this, there's going to be common statements, okay? So these common phrases I hear, and then some questions that maybe you ask yourself if you found out that you're making these comments. So how many of us have said, I don't have enough time in the day? I think that's a pretty common one. In fact, out of all the clients that I work with, I don't know anybody who has had total control of their time, where they have time freedom. So this is a very, very common thing, but let's ask ourselves, is it that? Is it that you don't have enough time? Or do you have a habit of saying yes in situations that you probably should say no to? Is it that, or are you not prioritizing your urgent and important over your non-urgent and your non-important? These are questions to think about that can be powerful. So how do we go about, what are some practical applications we go about building a habit around time? Well, first, you need to start with awareness. And you need to start with awareness of your relationship with time. This is a tough one because these programs are deeply rooted in us. Or that time is just a constant that happens out there. Let me give you kind of a quick example. If you're in a park and it's a beautiful day and you're with a loved one, hours can go by in a flash, right? However, if you're doing a workout from hell and you have 60 more seconds, you have to hold that plank, it could feel like the longest 60 seconds that's ever happened to you. Now think about that. Think about the 60 seconds versus hours. You can perceive differently, and you can build a habit of that where time frees up for you. So start with awareness. Then you want to ask yourself if you have the desire to change. Okay, so you know that you would like a better relationship with time. Now do you have a desire to change that? And then start small and daily. So what I suggest as an action that you can take is the urgent versus important matrix. You can easily Google it. It's just a matrix, and it allows you to keep track of where you stand on any given day. All right, how many of us avoid confrontation in relationships? This is a tough one because relationships have a lot of emotion that come with it. And so even thinking about this, you might have a knee-jerk reaction. Well, how can habits help my relationship? Let's get into it. Who do you try to appease when you don't communicate your feelings? I want to be clear here. I'm not judging you. There aren't any right answers here. I don't know your life. I'm just asking a question. Who do you try to appease when you don't communicate your feelings? Is avoiding confrontation an effective way to deal with your emotions within relationships? Tough questions. Building a habit of openness in relationships. So what are some practical applications? So how about starting a nightly journal, recapping times you withhold emotion? Think times that you got angry, that you're like, nope, not dealing with this. Or you were fearful, or you were sad, or you thought, it wouldn't be worth it. And sometimes it's not. I'm not saying that you need to say every little thing. Again, I don't know what's best for your life, but I do want to increase your awareness so we can get into the actions that make the most sense so you can build the habits that you want. So we have start with a nightly journal. We have read through the journals and ask yourself if you'd like to change that behavior. I think you'll notice there's a trend. Ultimately, everything starts with habitual behavior, with awareness, then a desire, and then taking action. And a lot of people they think that they're aware. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. They think that they have a desire, but maybe they do, maybe they don't. And then the action is where people trip up. And that's where my odyssey comes in. That's where people like me come in. So pinpoint, this is a great action to take. Pinpoint one relationship to start with. Communicate your goal to them and ask them to hold you accountable. So whatever it is that your goal is within the communication in that relationship or within that relationship, talk to them about it. Don't take every relationship and say, I'm just going to do this. That's going to be ineffective. You don't want to add so much weight into your backpack that you can't carry it. You just want to add a little bit of weight so you can start to become stronger. So Accountability partners. This is a great time to talk about it. When you have somebody to hold you accountable, you are much more likely to develop the habits that you want. Much more likely. All right, next one. I personally can't get away from this one. I find myself getting very frustrated on social media. People on social media are dumb. Man, especially now, it seems that a lot of people get frustrated with social media. So let's ask ourselves some questions. These are the questions that I ask myself. Are people dumb, or are you just not taking the time to hear things from their point of view? Is really everybody, like, is 50% of the people dumb? No, you're just not taking the time point of view. That's what I tell myself. Are you trying to communicate your points in an effective way, or do you let emotion take over? It's another tough question. Before judging people on social media, sometimes asking these questions can be very beneficial. How can you build a habit of better communication skills? I would say this is one of the biggest things that you can actualize in habit forming. This is one of the biggest things. You can use that math equation to help you. If you can communicate, you have a superpower. So test yourself randomly on your active listening skills. I personally believe, out of all the different forms of communication, that active listening is the most important. And we don't get taught this in school. It's such a frustration for me. We don't get taught this in school. So if you're not clear what active listening is, please email me. Again, my email is at the end. We can have a good in-depth discussion on this. I'm sticking on specifically habit formation as an overview, but active listening is so important in communication. Reflect to if you want to improve your communication skills and how that can be valuable for you. Give yourself reminders throughout the day to challenge the piece of communication you want to program. So again, it's not just active. I think active listening is most important, but maybe you get frustrated that you are unable to clearly articulate your point. Maybe you use way too many words. Listening in general, especially active listening, body language, empathy, all of these things within communication that you can work on, and you can start taking little actions daily. So it goes into the program. I don't know if I can handle much more. People get down on themselves. I've been there. My guess is you've been there. It's a tough situation. Here's some questions to ask yourself. Are the events that are happening, that you're perceiving, are they within your control? What lens are you viewing stress from? Very, very important. What lens are you viewing stress from? Did you know that you can change your perspective? So we often find ourselves looking at a tree in the forest and thinking that every tree is like this in the forest. Did you know that you can zoom out and look at the forest? You can create a habit of that. In fact, one of the biggest superpowers that you can develop in habitual behavior is the ability to go in, to zoom in when you need, and to zoom out when you need. What are you most proud of? The difficult times that you persevered, or the calm times where nothing happened? Would you want a life where there was no difficulty? Does difficulty derive purpose? Again, very tough questions. All right, a habit of being emotionally healthy. I'm gonna take another glass of water here. All right. So we're going to get into a little bit of the analytics and how analytics can be important, because we don't want to get stuck just looking at the tree. We want to be able to look at the forest and see how we're improving, see how our momentum is going up or down, because especially with emotion, it's very hard not to get caught up with how you're feeling right then and there. But when you look at a graph, when you look at analytics, you can say, oh, even if you're in a bad mood, you can look back and be like, man, I guess I am improving. So track spikes in your emotion. That's what we do inside the My Odyssey program. So inside the program for my company, we track everything. And we make sure that you are able to see the big picture, especially when there's some negative momentum that goes in your life. Determine if life would be better served with an emotional balance. Do you have the desire to change? I mean, sometimes it's great to be emotional. Feeling all the highs is wonderful. Depending on the emotion that impacts you, create a habit of doing the opposite. So an example of this would be working on anger. If you're angry a lot, try to implant a little bit more gratefulness in your life. You can have a habit of every day being grateful after lunch, as an example. So because there is a lot of emotionally struggling people during this time of the pandemic, I mean, obviously it's a very, very stressful time. I do have a free emotional health app that will be, that I'll offer to you, that you will get an invite to after this. It tracks things that are going on every day, gets you in the habit of gratitude, and you get an opportunity to chat with me or other online coaches within My Odyssey. Okay, financial habits. Have you ever said, I don't have enough money, or I never have enough money, or I wish I had more money? Are you in the same money cycle? Really think about that. Like, is your cycle, okay, I have and I spend, I have and I spend, I have and I spend. Well, what could you build habits of? Could you build habits of investing, even little amounts of money? Could you build a habit? Could you switch careers? Could you build a habit of working towards switching that careers? Well, here's a big one that can apply everywhere in life. Do you have discipline? So in this case with spending, but man, where else could discipline come in? Where could you, building a habit of discipline, how beneficial would that be for you? So here's some examples of positive financial habits. How about reading a book like Cash Flow Quadrant from the Rich Dad Poor Dad series that our keynote speaker, Susan Letcher, that will help you become aware of some of the positive habits that you might not even be aware that you should have if you want to get to another level. Determine what aspect is most important for you to change. So again, we don't want to start with something heavy. We want to make sure that we start small and we build. So a great quote to keep in mind is, the cost of our bad habits is in the future. The cost of our good habits is upfront. Really think about that. All right, let's say saving money is a goal. Let's go back to that metrics idea. Can we keep a metrics of how much money that we're saving per week? Could it be $1 a week? Could it be $10 a week, $100 a week? Does it matter the amount of money? Let's just get the metrics going. And then hold yourself accountable. All right, another one to do with the times. Since the pandemic, I've been crabby. I've been in a bad mood. I've been, bad with my kids, whatever the case may be. All right. Have you looked into ways, I make myself laugh. Have you looked into ways that you can make this time your bitch? What I mean by that is, with every challenge, there is opportunity. How can I say, F you, pandemic? This is what I'm doing now. Are the events themselves making you crabby, or is it your perception of them? Do you have control on whether or not you are crabby? This is a tough one. Some people, they don't feel like they have control, and we need to start on other different stuff. We need to build habits in other ways. Say yes to happiness. Okay, I'm not a motivational speaker. I just deal in the math equation that is habits. But there's an opportunity. Remember, in every challenge, there is an opportunity. There is an opportunity here. And the opportunity is, you have different cues. You have different events that are happening to you. You're not going to work every day, as an example. You can't go to your favorite watering hole. You can't do whatever it is. You have different cues, so it's an opportunity to change a piece of that math equation. Challenge, opportunity. If you need help with that, reach out. Sorry, I get a little excited sometimes. I think this is you have a big opportunity here, even though it does suck for, it can have the perception of sucking, but it's a big opportunity. I just went on a tangent. Give yourself emotional reasons as why you desire to change. So you could do something daily with your logical mind, and that will program a habit, but that will take time. If you have emotion behind it, if you use your limbic system to the best of your ability, it's going to be a lot quicker. Emotion, I mean, you've heard, if you're in marketing, people buy on emotion, not on logic. Same with yourself. You're no different than everybody else. So an example of something you can do, set an alarm on your phone. Program 3 daily reminders to take action. I have reminders built into all my clients' programs. Come up with something that you are proud of yourself for doing each day. When's the last time you said, hey, I'm proud of myself? It's for a lot of people, it's been a while. All right, coming to the end here, folks. Bonus. So here's some business and organizational info that I wanted to go over. So habitual trust. Real quick, when employees or management or other leadership, when they don't trust, it kinks the hose. Water still may be coming out, but it doesn't come out as flowing as it could. You can get rid of individuals' cognitive dissonance with awareness, building an awareness of whatever it is that we need to specifically work on. This is where having a specialty, somebody with a specialty on this, comes into play. Communication, building a Likert scale where you can gather information, gather analytics on how they're communicating, where they start, where they end, whether it be, front of house versus back of house workers, how they're communicating, whether it be, like I said, management and people on the floor, whatever it happens to be. We talked about culture needing to be a habit, mission statements, leaderboards, building that in so they habitually act in that way, habitually act with the same culture. This is all possible. This is all part of a math equation. Leadership. To me, the most important thing about being a leader is being empathetic. It's not being, cracking the whip. It's just being empathetic, listening, actively listening. People will want to go to battle with you if they feel like they're being listened to. Client adherence. So here's another couple ones. So all those are kind of meta that I've worked with businesses for. These are some of the more direct programs that I have in general that I can kind of plug and play. So client adherence, physical therapists, chiropractors, to get people to adhere to their plan of care. So what happens when somebody gets injured, they have a plan of care. That plan of care then translates, it's more weight for people to carry, so they don't do it. The 2/3 of people don't do their plan of care. Well, you can build better habitual framework so they do their plan of care. They get healthy faster, more referrals, which is obviously good for the doc. And on top of that, that habit may carry over where now they start working out. So it's a win-win. Lastly, habit of homework. With high schools as an example, if you have a high school student, the homework may just be too much to carry for them on a normal basis. Willpower only goes so far. You need to have that framework of habits. And by building relationships with the high school students and understanding what may be the kink in their hose, we can get them to have a habit of doing homework, which is very nice for parents. Here are the offers that I'm offering for the Well Corona Summit. First, emotional health app. Send this out to anybody. If somebody needs help, this is a free thing that I do. When I say an app, it's a computer program that you can use on your phone. And it goes over gratitude. We keep metrics of how we're actually doing, online coaching, metrics, analytics, journals. It has the whole thing, and it is helpful to people. So please, there's free of charge for everybody, and I'm not going to boot somebody off if, there's free of charge and there's nothing after that. So do that if somebody is in need or if you're in need. Or 1 month free accountability program. So that's where I build you personally a program within the My Odyssey app. Program includes bi-monthly checkpoint calls where you and I interact, or one of my coaches, online habit coaching, metrics to track progress. I become your accountability buddy. I mean, that's ultimately what happens, and we can make a habit of anything. It's so amazing once you understand that you can program this framework in the back of your head. So go ahead and email me, joshua@myodyssey.com, subject accountability for that offer. All right, let's work together. So here's how you can get a hold of me. Here's how you can see me. I got a ton of videos on YouTube and a ton more coming. And I love having conversations. Don't be shy. I reach out to people, on the street and just have conversations. We're all in this together. And lastly, I thought I'd make kind of a fun list of things that we've developed habits on that you might be like, what? Or conversely, which we didn't talk about much here, but conversely, how to cover up bad habits. You can't break habits. Those habits are already there, but you can build over them. So what does that look like? I mean, I've worked with a client who wanted to build a vocabulary. You would never think of that habitually, but that's something that we did. Got multiple clients off of drug dependencies. Had another, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I've done jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu for 14 years, actually over 14 years now. And one of the people one of my clients had a jiu-jitsu submission tracker. Yeah. Upper limit problems, random acts of kindness, self-worth. On our hero's journey, our biggest offering, we had a gentleman that hiked the Pacific Coast Trail that went from Canada to Mexico. And lastly, this frequency of love is the habit that I constantly build. I want to live on a frequency where I care about people. And I have daily reminders. I have metrics. I live within my own app. The frequency of love to me is where I want to reside, and I need to work to get there. So here's some interesting habits. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I hope you learned something. Reach out if you want.